Let me introduce to you John Smith. He's a modern-day dragon slayer. He slayed his first dragon when he lived in the big city of Houston, Texas, where the summer is all year long and the terrain is just as you picture it. So as you can imagine, the dragons were far and few between. With life comes changes, and now he finds himself in a small northern town. A place with real seasons, beautiful landscape, and logistical challenges. The dragons now are every corner and at every stop, and to slay them takes great will and fortitude. I know this because John Smith is me. I hope my journey will enlighten you to the law proposed and passed over 118 years ago that protects these dragons and poses a real challenge to persons with mobility issues. This law is the Grandfather Clause. Let me tell you a little bit about the Grandfather Clause. The Grandfather Clause is a provision in which an old rule continues to apply to some existing situations, while a new rule will apply to all future cases. Those exempt from the new rule are said to have grandfather rights. Frequently, the exception is limited. It may extend for a set time, or it may be lost under certain circumstances. Example: a grandfathered power plant might be exempt from new, more restrictive pollution laws, but the exception may be revoked and the new rule would apply if the plant were expanded. Often such a provision is used as a compromise or out of practicality to effect new rules without upsetting a well-established logistical or political situation. This extends the idea of a rule not being retroactively applied. The term originated in the late 19th century. Legislation and constitutional amendments passed by a number of U.S. southern states, which created new requirements for literacy tests, payment and poll taxes, and/or residency and property restrictions to registered voters. States in some cases exempted those whose ancestors or grandfathers had the right to vote before the Civil War and/or as a particular date from such requirements. The intent and effect of such rules was to prevent poor and illiterate African American former slaves and their descendants from voting, but without denying poor and illiterate whites the right to vote. Although these original grandfather clauses were eventually ruled unconstitutional, the term grandfather clause and grandfather have been adapted to other uses. So what this means for an average person with mobility issues is that if a building was constructed before the 1991 ADA standards, then this building does not need to modify to accommodate people with mobility issues. They now call this safe harbor. However, in 2010, new standards were imposed on some of these facilities like recreation centers and bowling alleys, but everyone else still claims safe harbor and can refuse to make the accommodations. The origins of this law. The original grandfather clause were contained in new state constitutions and Jim Crow laws passed by white dominant state legislators in 1890 to 1908 in the most of the southern United States to restrict voter rolls and effectively prevent blacks, Mexican Americans in Texas, and poor whites from voting. Prohibition of freedmen's voting in place before 1870 were nullified by the Fifth Amendment. And the Fifth Amendment reads that the United States Constitution prohibits the federal and state government from denying a citizen the right to vote based on the citizen's race, color, or provision, condition, or servitude. Okay, enough about this legal mumbo-jumbo and how it originated. Let's get back to the struggle one in my position endures when one of these dragons appears. Imagine you're hanging out at work with some friends, and one suggests you go to a local bar to have a nightcap. Without hesitation, you agree, and the group is off on their journey. On the way, you listen to the radio, and you think of nothing for the night ahead. You arrive at your destination only to find that the place you want to enter is located at the top of Mount Fuji, a mountain that is 3,776 meters high, or about 12,300 feet. They have no road to drive, or a special lift to raise you up, or even an escalator to get you to the top. Now, this example is pretty extreme, but when you find yourself staring down the mouth of a dragon, it sometimes looks impossible to defeat. So you find yourself having to resort to means that a person without mobility issues would not have to contemplate. You're forced into an uncomfortable position where you will need assistance of your friends or strangers to overcome this obstacle. You will have to step outside your comfort zone and ask them to assist you in entering a place that they will freely walk into. Knowing the people you ask will have no problem with helping you to enter this establishment. But let me ask you this question. When you go someplace, do you want to enter the building and scream as loud as you can so that everyone in the place is looking at you? I ask because this is how it feels when you're entering an establishment with people carrying you up the stairs. Or do you just want to enter like everyone else, quietly and unnoticed? Yeah, me too. Like I said earlier, you need strong will and fortitude to slay these dragons. I did find that not all who fall under this law use it in a way to keep from spending some cash to allow all that would like to visit. I have found with a little travel, I can find places that are most accommodating, and so the dragon at the door has been defeated by kind, courteous individuals who in some way understand that even a small majority of people still matter and are willing to help make them feel important in their own little way. So thank you.
I've been a dreamer all my life, and I know dreams come true. If you believe it's possible, then it can happen to you. Don't ever give up.
I think people that want to go out and explore the world, not sit on their butts and do nothing, should have the chance to do what they want to do, have access to everything.
I've been a dreamer all my life, and I know dreams come true.